Hello and welcome to our LinkedIn live stream. My name is Mark Smith. I'm going to be your host today. We will be discussing sustainable cities and decarbonisation. I hope you're doing very well this morning. We have two very special guests. Joining with us today is Professor Lucelia Rodriguez. Good morning, Lucelia.
Good morning, everybody.
A little bit of background about Lucelia. Lucelia obtained her Bachelor's of Architecture and Urban Design with honours from Universidade Mackenzie of Sao Paulo. She then made her way across the Atlantic to a well-known town called Nottingham, where she obtained her Master's of Renewable Energy and Sustainable Architecture at University of Nottingham. Lucelia then got her PhD in Thermal Performance of Low Energy and Zero Carbon Housing. Dr. Lucelia now lectures at Nottingham University and oversees numerous postgrad initiatives in sustainability. So thank you for joining us today, Lucelia.
I'm delighted to be here.
Excellent. Joining us as well is Anna Rafferty, 5Y ESG's transformation consultant. Anna is a native of Donegal. She is a Bachelor of Marine and Freshwater Biology with honours, and she also has a Master's in Environmental Health and Safety Management. Anna has numerous years' experience working in the renewables industry and is our ISO compliance expert. As an intrinsic member of the 5Y ESG team, Anna is on the front line with our customers on a day-to-day basis. Good morning, Anna. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Mark. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
So, guys, this is your first time here. We really appreciate you tuning in. If you could do us a massive favor and hit that like button and also hit the follow button on the 5Y ESG page, that would be really appreciated. We're doing a series of these live events and we have numerous topics and speakers lined up over the next couple of weeks. So your participation is really important to us and we really appreciate your time joining us today. This is an interactive session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them into the comments section. We're more than happy to field your questions and to help where we can. So to set the tone of today's discussion, I have a small video here which I'm going to play, which is going to be a good segue for what we have to discuss.
Rising around the world, the environmental effects of constructing and maintaining these large buildings are being taken more and more into consideration. Over the years, making buildings more environmentally friendly has become one of the top priorities. If you look around, you might find more buildings with trees, roof gardens, solar panels, and new approaches to natural light than ever before. The shift cannot be denied, and the United States, Singapore, Italy, and Australia are some of the countries leading the way in green building design. First off, we need to understand what green building is. It's the practice of increasing the efficiency of how buildings use energy, water, land, and materials. Doing this is aimed at reducing the effect the building has on its environment and slowing down the pace of climate change. However, a green building can be way more complex to construct, making it expensive and time-consuming. Since these buildings depend on the sun for energy, they need to be built in a place with good sunlight exposure, which may disrupt a neighborhood's layout.
So Lucelia, over to yourself, and just take her from that video. If we were to build all new apartments and houses tomorrow morning, and we were to put, plants and trees as far as the eye could see, that would absolutely make a huge impact on our, sustainability goals. But unfortunately, a lot of housing is already built, and there's a huge amount of challenges with older houses and older buildings. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you do and where you're at in your sustainability journey.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm talking from a very sunny Nottingham, so I'm going to use some examples from where I am and let you know a little bit more about where we are. And Mark's absolutely right. I think if we could build everything from scratch today, we could make things a lot better. Sadly, even the things that we're building today are not yet good enough. We are committed to becoming zero carbon, let's say countries and businesses and individuals, I hope. But without building buildings that are allowing us to live a zero carbon lifestyle, then we're not going to get there. To give an example of Nottingham to you, we've got about 164,000 households in Nottingham.
Okay.
Out of those, about 61% are below an EPC level of C. So EPC is the
Okay.
energy performance certificate that gives you that scoring, like when you buy a new fridge and you see the green to red. So C is when it starts to get greener, so it's a kind of a yellow level. But 61% of the homes today, they are below that level.
Okay.
We need to get everyone to the level that is green, so above EPC level C, and that's a massive task. But even if we did by 2030, which is the target to get that level of energy efficiency in buildings, we'll still be left with carbon emissions in Nottingham just from the existing housing stock, not talking about other businesses, not talking about the new stuff, just existing stuff. And that would mean to offset that through planting trees would be about 2 million trees per year,
Wow.
which would take at least a quarter of the area of the city to be built. So offsetting is not an option. We need to do more than that and to go further.
And some of the projects that you're involved with at the moment, they really are, going, deep into that problem and, finding, realistic ways of fixing that now. Tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you're doing.
So we research, some professors at the University of Nottingham. Here we do research and teaching. So a lot of the research we do is around what we call three main aspects of sustainability in building and the built environment. One of them is rationalize. So we're looking at, for example, existing buildings, how we can retrofit them and make them less energy intensive. We're also looking at electrification. So rationalize and electrify. And by electrification, I mean two main aspects would be electrifying heating. So we all, 80% of our homes are still heated by gas.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unsustainable and something we need to change at the core. And we need to change by allowing us to tap into a decarbonized electricity grid, which is a big win for everybody. But we can only do that if we can rationalize the use of energy. So just by tapping into existing green energy, it's just not going to be enough to go around. So we need to rationalize and then we need to electrify.
Okay.
And finally, we need to smartify. And that's what data becomes really important. And the reason why that is important is allow us to first understand where are the bottlenecks, where are the problems, where are the bits that we need to work on, understand the wins and celebrate the wins, but understand also where we're falling short. And enabling to illustrate and communicate those problems to the general public, people like watching us, business owners, people, individual households, so people can act and commit to believe on this.
Okay. And Anna, that topic of data and understanding the data, that is something that you would have regular conversations with your customers about.
Yeah, so look, what we're seeing now with customers is they have a lot of data, they've been tracking it, but it's stored on various different streams. So whether it's Bamboo HR, SharePoint, or on Excel sheets, they're all over the place. So where 5Y ESG would come in as a starting point, we'd go in, gather a feel from where you're currently at. So create a roadmap, decipher a plan, and then look at quantifying the data. So really, we're looking at a high-level approach to ESG reporting. We're complementing the Microsoft Sustainability Cloud, so people may be familiar with this. Organizations really, without platforms like this, are looking at large amounts of manual data input,
okay.
Which can be really time-consuming and also quite difficult to deliver. Especially if you're creating Power BI dashboards, it's hard when they're all from different streams. So this is really where we come in, yeah.
Absolutely. And Lucelia, there's obviously an eye to the future. Technology is evolving as well. How does Nottingham University use technology?
The first thing I think I need to point out is that we are expecting some big wins in the decarbonisation of cities. And I think those are going to happen. So when I talk about, for example, electrification of heating, if we have a decarbonized energy grid that we can tap into, then that's a really big win. And that's about half for the carbon emissions from a typical household. The problem is the other half is loss of little wins. They're not going to come very easily. And so those little wins include your choice of transport, what do you do with your waste, where do you buy your food, and how is your food wrapped. And there's lots and lots of little things that you need to think about on a daily basis. So our work looks at both rationalizing, so the need for heating being reduced, and helping to electrify heating by developing buildings that are better, retrofitting buildings that are better, but also tapping into initiatives such as community energy, when a community share assets and therefore have a better outcome for everybody.
Okay. And Anna, there's directives coming as well, I suppose, down the track from the EU. How does that change the landscape at the moment?
Yeah, so look, in February alone of this year already, we've seen the European Commission present a proposal for a law on corporate sustainability obligations. So this is the EU supply chain law, and this really reverts back to our Scope 3 emissions. And basically what it's asking companies is to audit their suppliers. So everything from negative impacts to human rights to potential negative environmental impacts. And once this draft really is approved by the European Parliament, we're seeing EU member states, I think, have 2 years, 2 years to transpose the directive into its national laws. Basically, we just have to get on board with that. So that's really what we're looking at coming down the track for the EU.
Okay. And Lucilla, do you have many, business customers, people who you collaborate with, people that come to you for a steer, help with their roadmap?
Absolutely. I mean, apart from the building side, we also look at electrification of fleet, and we've done a lot of work in that area. So everyone is committing to turn into electric transport. And in a small scale, that's fairly straightforward. For big businesses, that can mean service disruption if it's not well implemented. It can mean a massive investment. They might have a short or a small return for a very long payback period. So we do a lot of electrification work and looking at innovative charging technologies for cars and vans, and looking at ways how that can be part of the bigger energy system. So balancing out generation on site with storage from cars, for example, through bidirectional charging, and essentially allow people to charge and drive on sunshine.
Cars drive on sunshine. I love that. That's brilliant. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. Here's a word from our sponsor. Sustainability focuses on meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Every business is different, and so are its key ESG issues and its ability to manage them. At 5Y ESG, we provide ESG consulting and technology solutions to organizations like yours to help transform your environmental, social, and governance standing. Our highly experienced ESG consultants work closely with you and your business to help define your key ESG priorities, metrics, and targets using the latest methodologies and global standards. We can underpin your processes with the latest technology and help automate your reporting. Whether you are yet to define your roadmap or struggling to understand your Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, reach out to 5Y ESG today and allow us to help you make a difference and achieve your goals. So guys, welcome back. If you haven't done so already, if you can hit the like button on the stream, we'd really appreciate it. And of course, if you drop a like on the 5Y ESG LinkedIn page, you'll get a notification anytime for some of our future broadcasts, which we have lined up over the next couple of weeks. We're joined today by Professor Lucely Rodriguez from Nottingham University and Anna from 5Y ESG, who I suppose, Anna, there's a lot of conversations as well, and there's a lot of other organizations that are, setting the tone, or I suppose getting us set for the next couple of years, from a regulatory point of view and a compliance perspective. The carbon is a big topic. What's your take on some of the initiatives that are on the way?
Yeah, so look, it really all depends and relates back to who the EU supply chain law applies to. So it really depends on the organization. So there is organizations that are deemed high risk organizations, and that's, anywhere from textile, leather, agricultural, forestry. And their requirements in order to comply with the law are smaller. So 250 employees and a turnover of 40 million euro, I think.
Okay.
And then you're looking at smaller organizations, 200 or 500 employees and 150 million euro turnover. But what we're looking at is, okay, you might say, well, I only have 50 employees. This is not applicable to me. I don't need to comply with the EU supply chain law that's coming in. But you might be a supplier of one of these larger organizations. So this is how it's affecting everyone. So small and medium organizations could supply larger organizations and then maybe subject to, auditing under this new law. I think it affects roughly like 17,000 organizations currently is what they're looking at.
Okay.
So it is either going to impact you directly or indirectly. So that's kind of what we're looking at the minute. So a lot of our customers currently are trying to get ready for this. So what we're going to see down the line is if people aren't preparing this now, there's going to be a massive avalanche of organizations trying to get on board all at once. And I don't know if we have the capacity from an ESG perspective. So it's really important that organizations prepare for this now. So really.
So Lucalia, how would you say to customers, be it public, private sector, be it, even people at home, how best to prepare for what's coming down the track?
Well, as Lana said, it's a really big task, and it's not one that is easy for anybody. So don't feel that it's a problem for your business. It's a problem for everybody, and we all have to commit to this, from individuals to large organizations. You have to start thinking about a roadmap that started yesterday, not tomorrow. So when we're talking about 2030 targets, that's a really short period for you to change all your assets. I would start concentrating now with existing assets, for example, buildings and equipment and your fleet. How can you start to change them slowly towards that 2030 target? There will be some big wins. There might be that you can do, maybe a brand new factory that is zero carbon. Maybe you can improve existing manufacturing centers to be a lot better. It may be change all your fleet to electric fleet. But apart from the big wins, there'll be all the small wins that you're going to need help with really quite hard. And those will include your expanded supply chain, will include the way your employees relate to their business and they do the job, they come to work. And those will take a long time to get into place. Once you recognize where the problems are, quantify those problems, make a plan for tackling them, and then delivering that plan. So I think if anyone is not thinking about this yet, you should, because 2030 is tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. Time is ticking. And, back to your, I suppose, approach, the rationalize, electrify, and smartify. The three pillars that you would sort of, recommend to people to break it down and to create that plan. And electric cars, a huge part of that, but I suppose with, what's happening around the world at the moment, supply chain problems, that's probably going to even, push out those dates from 2030. It was already a hard thing to achieve, but, with some of the problems the world is facing at the moment, we could be looking at 2040, maybe even, by the time. What's your thoughts on that?
It is a big problem. I think Anna points out there'll be no capacity, maybe from your business, but there actually be no capacity for more businesses that have to deliver the same thing all at once. So at the moment in the UK, for example, you're already observing a problem in the retrofit of homes, because there has been a few funding schemes that came out to retrofit social housing all together. And suddenly the whole country was looking for the same suppliers or the same products and the same installers to do a job across the country, so that everything is delayed, budgets are closing without delivery. So I think this needs a bigger plan.
Okay.
And it's by scaling up slowly, having a roadmap plan that you have intermediate points of checking. So checkout points when you say, actually, we think the next, for example, Nottingham carbon neutrality target is 2028, so it's earlier than anybody else. It's the first city in UK to sign up for such a target and so early.
Wow.
So before getting to 2028, there needs to be intermediate points when we check. And one of them has just been last year. So the carbon neutral team has looked at what's been achieved, has recognized a lot of the easy wins have been won, and there is a lot of more work to be done on the harder wins. And it has made a new plan, a new roadmap to work against those. And the way I see it, Mark, if we don't all get to be zero carbon by 2050, which is the target for the whole planet to get there, but at least if you get there maybe 80% of the way, I think that's a massive improvement.
Yeah.
We always have to aim to go beyond those targets, we aim to go beyond the line so we can reach the line at that stage. So, if you can't get as far as zero carbon, but you can get as far as 80%, then let's go for it. And let's look at the other 20% when we get to that stage.
Absolutely. And Anna, that making a start, setting us on that track, so some organizations, and I suppose when it comes back to numbers as well, what if my organization only has 25, 50 employees? Like, what can those organizations start to do today to help?
Yeah, you're really, from a smaller organizational perspective, you're looking at, do you supply larger organizations? Are you a supplier? Because the EU supply chain law, when that comes into effect, it's going to look at smaller organizations as well. Smaller organizations still have data. They still are gathering data. This is where a platform would come in handy. Maybe they don't have one universal system. Just to piggyback a wee bit on what Sally was talking about, she was saying about easy wins. So ESG, from an ESG perspective, the platform does have an initiative and goals section. So this is where we put our easy wins. You may have things, like the gender pay gap is something that, a lot of organizations are talking about now. Conducting a gender pay gap analysis may be a larger scale item, but an easy win would just even be looking into it, or, creating a committee for diversity and inclusion, or changing your onboarding process to make sure it was inclusive or the language was inclusive. So these are all kind of easy wins from an ESG perspective, and they can definitely relay from an environmental perspective too. There is loads of easy wins, and this can all be tracked. So from an ESG perspective, we're just looking that everything is tracked, whether it's our missions, our easy wins, our goals, and where we want to be, in 5 years' time. All of this is to be tracked. So if I was starting off in a small organization, that's where my starting point would be to sit down and see where I'm at, what I've already tracked, and how I can display this all in one area.
And then I suppose, once you have that data and you create your baseline, it's very easy to look back and say, okay, well, we have, made a difference in a 12-month, 18-month, 24-month period. Get that baseline, understand where you are, I suppose, is the trick. Because a lot of organizations don't understand where they are right now, and it's okay, well, let's move over our lighting in our buildings, or let's increase our insulation or heating. But unless you have that baseline, there's it's very hard, I suppose, for organizations to create these initiatives and to see them through.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're not tracking it in the first place, how do you know where you improve? It could be as simple as tracking your waste, becoming a paper-free office. Small things like this can all be tracked. But if you don't have a starting point, where in 2 years' time, what do you go from? Where do you set your KPIs as? Yeah. So it's really just gathering that starting point.
And Lisa, any other starting points that you'd recommend for organizations to look at?
I was going to complement that by saying that actually the other big thing about tracking is it allows us to build a business case for improvement. Otherwise, if you don't have an understanding of where your bottlenecks are and where you're falling short, it makes it really difficult to quantify the financial needs, investment to improve those aspects and actually justify long term. So, for example, by improving the insulation of a building, it can significantly reduce the heating cost. We all probably being suffered. I don't know if everyone is, but we are really certainly suffering with the increasing cost of energy, particularly gas. So if you're still gas heated in your business or in your household, you're probably suffering enough now to be thinking, I must do something about this. If you understand your baseline, you can then start to work out what's the savings long term. And where savings are not enough to pay back, then that's why you can start putting pressure on the government for grants that would allow people to get to the right place at the right time.
Guys, we have a question come in here from Mark Kane, which I'm going to ask the panel. And he says, ironically, large organizations in richer countries are using carbon offsets from poorer countries to keep on with business as usual. What are your thoughts on that, Lucelia?
I think there's no harm in offsetting. However, if you don't rationalize, there isn't enough space to go around. So if offsetting means planting trees, imagine if all single large organizations on the planet were trying to plant trees to offset all their carbon. Okay. There's just not enough space, not enough money to go around, not enough trees. Trees will also take 20 years to start to really effectively offsetting the carbon.
That's true.
And if you're thinking about replanting them now, you're not really doing it for another 20 years. And it might be that you're actually releasing more carbon by then because they might have expanded their business. So it's just not the way forward. The first thing we need to do is to rationalize. And then once we've done that, and we've done everything we can, and we identify that there's a portion of those carbon emissions that we just can't tackle, that's when you're going to go and offset.
Okay. Anna, carbon offsetting over trees. We had Henry Duggan on last week from Irish Forestry. He was very passionate about what we need to do. I suppose blockchain is probably something that's going to help that industry and enable organizations to stand over those numbers. Do you think that can we plant our way out of it? Which was a question that sort of came up last week.
Look, I think it's hard to say whether we can plant our way out of it. Like, there is different initiatives we can all get involved in. But if we don't know what we're emitting, that's kind of the first problem. For example, there is organizations we can get involved with. So like the Carbon Disclosure Project, where you'll disclose your emissions and then they're verified by a third party. So these kind of organizations, we need to see where we're at first before we can take on planting. But definitely, like, I'm all for planting loads of trees, but it's just whether we know if it's because a tree doesn't emit like the carbon as much as it would take me to commute to Dublin.
Yeah,
I would emit more than planting one tree will. So it's really about the life cycle and knowing where we are as a starting point.
Lucelia, anything else that comes, I suppose, to mind with regard to initiatives or things that you guys are looking at Nottingham University at the moment?
Well, we're looking at lots of different aspects that might be helpful. I think in this idea of we spoke quite a bit of rationalizing, quite a bit about electrifying, but smartifying is another aspect that we should invest on. Not only understand your data, but then the ability to control the different systems that are emitting carbon and that are keeping people comfortable and productive. And that ability comes from being able to smartify your services. And by that I mean, for example, having controls in buildings that would allow people to become more comfortable, more productive in particular rooms without affecting the whole emissions from the whole manufacturing facility. Or by really fully understanding where your fleet is and what they're doing in the day and what times are they stopping for how long. So you can think about when you can be charging and discharging from greener electricity. So there's a lot to say for the need to smartify and understand data, as well as being able to control data through intelligent algorithm development. Quite a bit of the work we do is around that background. We don't really get to see, but it's what happens behind the scenes. When the data comes in, we work out what is needed, and then we come out with solutions. For example, use renewable now, or store the renewable now, or export the renewable now, or just sell it back to the grid, or sell it back to a neighbor, or charge your car. So there's a lot to say for that intelligence, and that intelligence can only be confident work through data and good quality data.
We've a good point here from Gemma Greaves. When it comes from direction, does it have to come from a government level, or can more be done from the consumer side? I suppose that's a question around responsibility. Do you think that, is it a combination of obviously of both? But do you think the governments need to step up more, Lucelia, when it comes to setting policies, or is it a case that the customers need to vote with their feet or vote with their money in their back pocket when it comes to making decisions around more sustainable and ethical products?
Well, it's a combination, isn't it? Because policies come first, but by the time the policies are made into regulations, there's quite a long delay. And when that finally happens, then it's a bit too late. So if you're waiting for the regulations to really hit you, and then you're going to have a few years, 2-3 years to turn it all around and become carbon neutral, you're just not going to manage that. So before that happens, before it comes from above, you must commit from below. So you need to come bottom up as well as top down. And the other thing, of course, the government often takes an easy route out in terms of grants and investment. So, for example, it could be typically we see investment or improving heating systems, for example, by changing gas heating to electrical heating. However, without improving the buildings themselves and without improving the occupants of the buildings, then just changing the gas heating to electric heating is not going to do the job. So I think there's a combination. The government certainly needs to provide grants for the things that just can't be achieved by individuals or businesses. Otherwise, there's no way we can all get there. But at the same time, every single person needs to recognize that we have a big role to play. And yes, there'll be a big green. There'll be a green electricity coming through your cables, and that's fine. But that's only half of the job. The other half of the job is you and me making those decisions on how I get to work, how I eat my food, where my waste goes, and whether I'm switching off my heating in June or I'm keeping it on through the year.
Thank you. And I suppose like that supply chain question, for organizations, you have to, and Scope 3 comes into this as well. So, you now have to be aware of what your supplier's ESG position is, and you have to, because we're all sort of intertwined now. It's not a straightforward case of not buying or buying, depending on who your supplier is. There's other, ethical things to think about here. What would be, your advice there?
Yeah, well, look, I just see it as ESG reporting isn't going to be a passing trend. So, it involves the future of our planet and society as a whole. So, companies that choose or that get on board with ESG reporting and put it into practice are fulfilling a humanitarian role, but they're also going to be fully equipped to take advantage of competitive edges. So whether that's relationships with investors, financial institutions, or even customers, people want to know that the person that or the company that they're investing with or they're involved with share the same values. So it's really all relates back to that organizational's values. Are they living by them? Do they put them into practice? And it's all falling under the ESG remit. So that's kind of what we're looking at now.
Okay. Okay, guys. So we're just going to round up. I'm just going to check for more questions here. Okay. So question from Jim Young to the panel. What are the panel's thoughts on the use of NFTs for carbon credit commoditization? Who wants that one? So, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, we're linked in with the blockchain on that. An NFT, I suppose, to purchase one, to, put on your corporate website to say that, you're part of that. I'm not too, au fait on how that could link back. Any ideas, guys?
Yeah, look, I have to admit now, NFTs are not something that I'm particularly well versed in. But we do have a very tech guy, a very good tech guy on our team that I know is definitely, and it's something if you want to drop just your LinkedIn details, we'll definitely have a discussion about it offline if that's something, that's okay with, unless Cecilia, you have something you would like to bring into that question.
But as you, I'm not particularly versed on the particulars of an NFTs, but the way I see, if you can rationalize first and reduce the need for carbon, and then you find ways where carbon can be traded and have a value, then there is no harm on doing that. What we can't do is just give the value now without attempting to reduce. So as I think was mentioned before by Mark on the comments, bigger business might just buy their way out of this, and that's not the right way forward. But actually finding other ways of dealing with the problem is not necessarily something I would exclude. And I think I've seen initiatives where people monetize their carbon by taking initiative and reducing your carbon emissions and being able to quantify that. Then you can get vouchers, you can get reductions of costs here and there, so that everyone who shares the same value can make an offer in return for your effort. And if anything, that encourages people to take up ownership of the problem and deliver, then I think it's fine with me.
Mark Kane has helped us out here. So great question, Jim. They absolutely have a role to play in terms of verifying sustainability claims. The important question is the right blockchain ecosystem, as many are themselves energy intensive. We work with VeChain STG ecosystem, and that's a very good point. So if you build any blockchain verification system on Ethereum, for example, we're still proof of stake there, and they are moving to the Ethereum 2.0 towards the end of the year. VeChain it would be a better choice, and we have spoken. Actually, we have plans to maybe do a blockchain specific broadcast the next couple of weeks. But the fact that the cost of a transaction on the VeChain network, so if you want to verify a tree being planted in Dublin or in Nottingham or wherever it is, the cost of that transaction on VeChain is 0.0007 cents, so 1/7 of a cent, which allows you to scale out that verification hugely. And if you were to do that, let's say on the Ethereum network, that would cost a huge amount more, for that one transaction. So the cost of transaction when it comes to verifying anything on a blockchain is a huge factor there. And definitely, we will have that specific broadcast in the coming weeks. And also, blockchain can help prevent duplicate claims, absolutely, for the same carbon credit. For example, there was a Guardian story on airlines all claiming for the same area of Amazon rainforest. Yeah, we're familiar with that story as well. So that's where blockchain can help to, validate that. So, guys, I want to thank you very much today for your time. Really appreciate your time, Professor Lusalia. And Anna Rafferty, thank you very much for joining us, guys. If you have any questions, make sure you reach out to us. My email address is below, and actually, even if you comment on the broadcast post go live, we'll pick those up as well. Be more than happy to come back to you and reach out. So for everybody who's tuned in live, thanks a million. We really appreciate your time today. And we're going to leave you with our last VT. And we look forward to seeing you in the next broadcast. Professor Lusalia, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. Delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And Anna, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks a million, guys, and thanks everyone for joining.
We'll talk to you soon.